Welcome along to this Zoom call, which is a content collaboration between Property Tribes and our friends and colleagues at Platinum Property Partners. And the kind of subject of this call is we're going to be talking about the dynamics of HMO investing in the current market conditions. And I am joined on this call by three people with serious HMO credentials, and I'm just briefly going to ask them to kindly introduce themselves. So Emma, could we start with you? What's your HMO kind of backstory?
Yeah, great. So hi Vanessa, thanks for having us on the call today. My name's Emma. I'm the Managing Director here at Platinum Property Partners. I've worked for Platinum for 9 years now, so I've pretty much seen everything and anything that can happen with regards to HMOs. We've got a fantastic network of partners, and working within our head office team, we sort of troubleshoot and do all of the support and training for our entire community. So that's given me a really good insight into the ins and outs. I've also got my own portfolio, which is made up of HMOs. I've got an Airbnb and a buy-to-let. So living and breathing our model, and a couple of other bits and pieces on a day-to-day basis as well. So hopefully that qualifies me for this call, which is going to be good.
Most definitely. Mike, what about you? What's your HMO journey been like?
Hi Vanessa, so I'm Mike Hishhawks. I'm a PPP franchise partner, and I've been part of Platinum for 8.5 years now. Before joining Platinum, I had some single buy-to-lets in the north, but I was looking to try and get better returns. So I joined Platinum 8.5 years ago. Currently got 8 HMOs up and running, with another one currently going through planning applications. So we're right in the middle of the HMO world, really. So I spend a lot of time on our own portfolio, but also working with Platinum, helping our partners across the country develop their own portfolios.
Fantastic. And last but by no means least, Ben.
Well, hi Vanessa, thanks for having me today. A little bit of background. I've been with Platinum Property Partners as a franchise partner for 6 years. Also managed to get 6 HMOs up and running. Prior to that, very much accidental landlord, had a property, wanted to move, couldn't sell it, so decided to rent it out. And that's really been over a 20-year journey. But over the last 6 years, it's been full focus on HMOs. And we're just in the process now of doing our 7th, going through the planning process on that, and hopefully have that up and running in sort of early part of next year.
Fantastic. Well, all three of you obviously very, very committed to the HMO business model, very immersed in the sector, and there's a lot to talk about at the moment. I mean, I think we should go straight to what could be the elephant in the room, and that is, the ongoing energy crisis. We've had a lot of concerned HMO landlords on Property Tribes worried about tenants' energy usage. I think clearly, there are ways to mitigate that. What's been going on within the PP network or in your individual properties to actually deal with the increasing cost of utilities? Emma, have you come up with anything?
So I can cover off what we've done from a Platinum perspective and how we're supporting our partners. First thing, there's always lots of worry. When these new things happen in the market, there's always lots that happens in the headlines that causes panic. The first thing that we're always conscious of is reassuring our partners that they are investing over a long period of time, and to not be too distracted by the short-term sort of headline scaremongering that inevitably takes place. But as far as actually tactically, how do we deal with these sort of inevitable increases in costs? Last month or this month, we pulled together and started or launched an investment strategy campaign, which is all about sort of really delving into the fine detail of the operational costs of each and every portfolio or property within our network, encouraging partners to interrogate their costs and make sure that to a really granular level, they are sort of streamlining, being efficient, making sure they're working with what they've got and looking to improve from a cost basis. But also sort of to dovetail with that, that they're doing regular rent reviews, and I don't mean sort of regular rent increases as such, but actually they're interrogating what their current rental charges are versus of market expectations. We find that in Platinum we get a lot of long-standing tenants, and we don't have huge turnover and sort of really regularly. So we're always encouraging partners to actually look back, and even if they've had housemates sitting still for a fair period of time, to actually benchmark those against what the sort of market rent is, and then essentially set target rents based on these new increases that are coming in later on this year. And we've encouraged our partners to do that with plenty of warning, so that they're able to then consult with their housemates, be honest about the situation that's happening. I think there isn't probably a living adult sort of in our economy at the moment that is unaware of what's happening from a cost and energy perspective. We've seen that our partners that have had those conversations with their tenants about putting prices up where they have been long-standing have gone quite well. People have been quite understanding about maybe having their rent increased by 30, 40, maybe £50 a month. So we've tried to get our partners to sort of streamline existing costs, increase their rents where reasonable, but absolutely take a consultative approach with their tenants so that there's no sort of bad feeling that's caused, and everybody is worked with on a one-to-one basis. Guys, Mike and Ben, how has that sort of gone in practice for you guys? How are you dealing from it from an existing landlord perspective, and what are your thoughts?
Shall I go first? So from our perspective, it's about communication. Absolutely what Emma's saying. It's talking to the tenants. I think the interesting thing is that the tenants are acutely aware of it. Probably about 6 months ago, they weren't really taking much notice of it, but because it's gathered so much attention in the media, I'm finding a lot of feedback from tenants, and indeed they are concerned. They don't want to see big rent rises, so they understand that they have a part to play in this in terms of their consumption of energy. I think the other thing is to actually look at each property in detail. Having more than one HMO gives us the opportunity to look at that. Similar houses can have very different costings. We've looked at our insulation probably more thoroughly than we have done in the past, but also the controls. So things like controlling the heating to make sure we're running efficiently and not running at maximum when there's nobody in the house, talking to the housemates when they actually want the heating on and giving them the option to turn it up when they need it. I think there's a lot of wastage that we can actually cut out, and everyone needs to do their bit. It's a market, so this is going to be something we have to deal with. And in the long term, and property is a long-term investment, it's something that will level out, I'm quite sure. But yeah, in the short term, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. It can't just be put to one side.
There's something about control the controllables, isn't there? So I think some of these things are not in our control, like the actual cost of the electricity or gas or whatever. So you can look at all the other levers which Ben and Emma have talked through about how you interrogate the numbers and make sure you pull all the levers you can pull to make sure that the effectiveness of your profitability is maintained as much as you can. And some of that is rent increases, but some of it, as the guys have said, is about cost control in other areas. In terms of energy itself, we've got some great experts in the franchise who really delve into this subject in a lot of details. They share a lot of good practice around about heat controls, the best heating systems that you can have, and control systems. So yes, we've got controls in all the houses. We've got landlord controls on the temperatures. We allow the tenants clearly to increase the temperature when they want to. Certainly during the winter they will be, but we have got a control over it. So we've got good controls in place, but you have got an underlying market there which is clearly got inflation built into it in the energy market. It's up to us to manage that, as you will with any other business. And I think this is where I think having an investor mindset rather than just a landlord mindset is important. So you consider it as a business rather than just a property, and you pull all the levers you would in a normal business to maintain profitability and serve your customers, which is the crucial thing, really.
Absolutely. I had a call from a journalist at the Financial Times this afternoon saying she wanted to talk to me about why landlords are putting up rents, and I was very quick to tell her that landlords don't dictate market rents. It's actually based on supply and demand and what the market will support, and just because landlord costs are going up, you can't necessarily put up the rent. But of course we are seeing huge demand for rental accommodation at the moment, so it does seem to be kind of going hand in hand. And we've talked about one of the threats to HMOs, and and I'm going to move on to the opportunities of HMOs in just a second. But I think the other thing that concerns people is this trend towards individual council tax banding as well. Have any of you experienced that within your portfolio areas?
Well, across Platinum, we've had about 3 or 4 cases in the last 7 years. So it's very, very small. It's one of these issues, again, that gets a lot of anxiety. And I think it's sort of a dual thing here. The likelihood of it happening actually is low. The impact, if it did happen on a property, is high because it affects the profitability, but actually affects the housemates as well, because the complexity of paying council tax by room, when the tenant then becomes liable for it, is actually very complicated. And each council, we know, are handling this issue differently as well. So you have got a lot of variation taking place. Certainly within our franchise, we're very keen to make sure this issue is put to bed, actually. So we want to campaign to make sure that the council tax banding issue is solved as a policy issue rather than just being left to the discretion of local VO officers. That feels to me a bit of a nonsense, really, when you've got such variability across the country. So we're keen to work with other organisations and government to try and get this sorted out, actually, because it just feels like in the end it will hit tenants and housemates, because in the end their costs will go up, and none of us want that. You know, we want to provide really high quality accommodation in fantastic houses. We offer brilliant customer service, but you want it to offer great value to our housemates. So we will do anything we can to influence that as well, and that probably means influencing government, I think, at this stage.
Well, that's really good to know, Mike. And I think, you know, so much of what this government does, it feels like an attack on landlords, but ultimately it does become an attack on tenants, because everything feeds through to them in the end. And we've seen that with all sorts of different government policies. Let's talk about the opportunities now, because we are seeing this kind of embedding of the working from home trend. And I can see a high demand for rooms in cities where people just want a room for maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, and then they go out to their house in the country when they can work from home. Is that a trend that you're seeing, or how are you seeing rental demand at the moment? How about you, Ben? How are you experiencing it?
Well, the sort of demographic of our average tenant seems to be sort of 25 to 35 at the moment. We do have older tenants, but the main demographic fit the criteria that they want flexibility. They tend to want to be based in a town or a city, and they may have a contract for 6 or 12 months, and they want to basically have somewhere comfortable to stay, but they don't need to have all the furniture that would go with renting an unfurnished flat, for example. What we're finding with those tenants is they tend to work from home a couple of days a week. That's very, very common. So they have to go to an office, but equally they want the flexibility. The employer wants the flexibility that they can call on the staff when they need them. So things like high-speed internet is so important to our tenants now. Unfortunately, we are gradually seeing that being rolled out, certainly in the major centres, where we can offer superb connections. But the main thing, I think, with the tenants is flexibility. We're also seeing quite a lot of people where you're having marital splits. So typically, somebody leaves the marital home, they're still paying or contributing towards it, and they also want to have somewhere nice to live. But again, they don't want that extra cost of having to rent a property on their own. So sharing it with other people is a neat fit for them. So those are sort of certainly our main sort of tenants that we're finding at the moment.
Well, I guess also, you know, with people working from home, that also impacts the amount of energy used in the property. Could be more because people are spending more time at home, and that's why it is important to address this, as we discussed earlier. But also, I think when people are becoming aware of the cost of living crisis, which they are because the media has been drumming it into them, they start to think about pulling in their horns, reducing their costs. And if you think of housing tenure, probably you know, you'd start with a 1-bed flat as very affordable, then a studio flat even more affordable, and then a room in a shared house the most affordable option. So I can see people actually moving down from, say, a 1 or 2 bed flat or even a studio into shared accommodation because they want to reduce their housing costs. So I can see very, very high demand for HMO rooms going forwards in the right locations. Are you guys sharing that opinion and view?
Absolutely. We've just published a blog recently where some of our partners have actually got waiting lists for their rooms at the moment, which is, we seem to have sort of recovered through a bit of a dip in early lockdown. We're back sort of stronger than ever. I think that I put on LinkedIn today that our occupancy for June was over 96%, which is extremely high, and it's over sort of such a high number of properties. But I think, you know, when we were in lockdown, a lot of our partners sort of responded really quickly to the whole working from home movement. We've always encouraged our partners to provide sort of working from home facilities. So we've always had desks in rooms and things like that. But where there was such an intensity on that model for a period of time, we've seen more and more partners actually sort of kind of embrace that as more of a permanent setup. So rather than just having sort of the facility for people to work from home in their rooms, we've actually started seeing more of a sort of co-working space being built out in communal areas. Again, to sort of recognise that if people are going to be sort of living in one of our houses, we don't necessarily want them to just feel cooped up in their room all day and night. So having that opportunity to work sort of perhaps with another person in sort of a nice, bright, airy, fresh communal space that's fit for purpose is definitely something that we've seen more of our partners sort of move towards over the last sort of year or so. And from as you say, sort of what kind of accommodation are people choosing? Our sort of shared accommodation is in high demand, but I think from a cost perspective, that's absolutely one thing that will be on people's minds, sort of having reliability of every month, this is how much I need to sort of worry about paying out, as opposed to being stressed and anxious over varying energy costs. But I think there's also that loneliness and sort of companionship piece, where actually if you get a housemate, if you get a house full of other people that you really get on with, that can be a really enjoyable experience, especially as Ben says, but especially for that demographic of people that are looking for flexibility. Why be flexible and kind of be on your own if you can share and sort of make hopefully like lifelong relationships. So
yeah, anything to add to that, Mike?
No, our demographics are very similar to the ones Ben's described, actually. So tend to be younger people. I think, given everything that's happening at the moment, I think the thing that stands out for me that is really positive in our model is that we're offering housemates a level of consistency and, you know, sort of lack of variation in the rent, lack of taking away all the variables for them, just gives them certainty in their lives. And I think that's just so important for people. So I think I agree with you, Vanessa. I think some people living in 1-bedroom flats or studios at the moment will be hit by some big increases in their costs at the moment. And they may well choose actually to move to an HMO model because the costs are more controllable and under control than they've got in their own house, where they're they're paying all the bills themselves. So they are exposed at the moment in that market. And I can see that being quite a tough market in those single households going forward for the next year or two.
Well, this is what I love about investing in property. Whenever there are challenges, that there's always opportunities. And I think one of the great things about the PPP network is it's like a hive mind of knowledgeable people who are examining every angle open to them, looking at all the different ways to make it work and sharing that knowledge. And I think that's just so incredibly powerful. And I want to tap more into that knowledge now, because I want to talk about actually making the jump to HMOs. I always say on Property Tribes, I'm very risk averse. I do standard single occupancy buy-to-let and holiday lets, and I've never taken that jump to an HMO. I think it's quite a big jump. I describe metaphorically buy-to-let as being a Ford Fiesta, if we make an analogy towards the car. So low risk, low return on the enjoyment of driving it. But to me, an HMO is like a Ferrari. So high risk, high return. And if things go wrong and you crash, it could be very, very expensive. I'd be interested to know how you made the start in HMOs. Was it you, Mike, who said that you started out with standard buy-to-let?
Yeah, that's right. So
how did you kind of, sorry to interrupt, but I'm really curious about the mindset of how you jumped from a relatively low risk, low management scenario into HMOs.
Yeah, so the management of the buy-to-lets was outsourced to an agency, so it was very low risk and low effort from my point of view, but the returns were low as well. And actually, any individual large bills in one of those houses, might be a roof repair or whatever, or bathroom refurbishment, does wipe out a huge chunk of the profit for that year for that property. So again, with any property investment, it's got to be long term. But I felt that it wasn't going to be giving the returns that we needed at the time for me to stop my corporate role, and that was the objective. So I looked around the market at what was available, and I came across Platinum through some contacts of mine. And what they gave, I guess, was a huge amount of confidence that the model works, the expertise is there, the training's there. And when things change, and certainly I've seen a lot change in 8.5 years in the marketplace, you've got to adapt the model, and that's where PPP have been fantastic in helping partners adapt their model according to the financial challenges of the day. And there's always something happening. It's not always energy crisis, but there's always something happening. So you just have to be on your toes like any business person and have that investor mindset ready. So that I came into HMOs, therefore, very simply, I joined Platinum. And I think my reflection would be that maybe I could have done some of this on my own, but I would have made a lot more mistakes. And I think the cost of mistakes these days, especially in terms of the cost of getting things wrong legally now, is actually, pretty huge. You've got to make sure you are absolutely compliant. And so I could have done some stuff on my own. I certainly wouldn't have had the pace that we had in building our portfolio, and I would have made more mistakes, definitely along the way. So I think having an organisation that you're part of, that you can believe in, trust in, help you through this, I think is really invaluable, actually.
I agree. I think that's a huge kind of ingredient in helping people take that step into HMOs, to have that level of expertise, support and knowledge, and the staff that assist you on a daily basis. There's a whole team at head office, which Emma manages, which is there to assist the partners. It's just a brilliant, proven model. How was it for you, Ben, when you started out? Did you regard HMOs as higher risk? How did you approach starting your portfolio?
Yeah, very similar to Mike, really. We had some single AST buy-to-lets that were managed, and they just sort of sat there, and every year there'd be a big bill that came in, new boiler, roof repair, windows. It was ongoing, and that would just wipe out the profitability. So then it was basically looking at from a sort of long-term investment, but that's not really very interesting. And I think from our perspective, I've always been involved in the service industry, and I think having an interest in property and being in a service industry was really what drew me to actually get involved in HMOs. I had a lot of concern about HMOs before I joined Platinum, because knowledge is everything. In any business, you need to know what you're talking about, and property tends to have several noughts on the end. So the more knowledge you have, the better. I think the other thing is that the buy-to-let market has become a lot more sophisticated over the last 20 years. We've seen constant change in legislation, change in tenants' profile in terms of also what they're looking for. And I think it's just grown up. And I think the HMO model is a really important part of the mix of rental that we should have in the country. But it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done well, and it needs to be done as a business. I don't believe HMOs are for somebody who's looking for a passive income. They need to be managed. And I see our tenants as clients. They're my customers. So they need to be happy. If there's a problem with the property, it needs to be dealt with as swiftly as we can so that we have a good reputation. And as Emma alluded to earlier, we are now starting to see waiting lists for our rooms. And that's because word of mouth, the other tenants saying, oh, it's great living here. The landlord really looks after me. And I think, that's come through having a support network. It's a lonely business out there. when you're standing outside of a property on a rainy day waiting for a plumber to arrive, and he phones you to say he's not coming that day. So it's really nice to have other people, kindred spirits, that you can actually talk about your experiences and learn, because everybody's been through different scenarios with their HMOs, that we can all benefit from that knowledge. So it's really, I suppose, knowledge is key, and we were keen to be with a group of people that we could tap into that knowledge.
I guess, Emma, it's very similar to the philosophy of property tribes, in that it's a hive mind of information, and you can make other people's hindsight your foresight, so you don't fall down the pitfalls that they fell down before you. And I think we do know that even lenders regard HMOs as slightly higher risk. They do tend to like to see somebody's had some single occupancy buy-to-let experience in order to get finance, although I recognise that there are financial products out there for first-time HMO landlords. But I think this is where PPP comes into its own, because you've got this very long back history of HMO knowledge, and so many different people within the network who are sharing and growing their businesses and raising their game. And it's non-competitive. You're all there to support each other, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny actually that we wouldn't actually say that our model is high risk at all. It's a great difference actually when you're like in the Platinum network. One of our sort of core values is de-risking investment for our partners. And if we look at sort of buy-to-lets as potentially higher risk, in the sense that, as what Mike and Ben have said, you get one sort of unexpected big bill in a year, then that wipes out your profit. With the HMO model, we've been trading 15 years this year. We've seen all sorts of different economic ups and downs. And the HMO model is robust and resilient. And even when the whole country goes into lockdown, the property market is shut down, our partners were still able to weather that storm and still actually make healthy profits to keep their businesses safe. So although HMOs are perceived as more, they are absolutely more complicated. There's a lot more that goes into getting one up and running, and the operations is more intense. Actually, from a risk perspective, we would say that they are less of a risky sort of investment model, assuming that you get the right support and you underpin your activity with, as Ben says, the right knowledge. And well, that's one of the great things, as we always say about Platinum. We've been going for 15 years. Some of our refurb mentors have been with us from day one. They've refurbed goodness knows how many properties, and always learning, testing, measuring, reflecting, try again. And that hive mentality, as you say, you've got on Property Tribes, is absolutely fantastic for existing and new investors looking to learn and sort of contribute back into that forum.
Well, of course, if a standard single occupancy buy-to-let is void, you've got zero income. Absolutely. In an HMO, you might have 5 or 6 rooms and one might be void, so you still have got income. So definitely from that point of view, that perspective, I can see that the risk is less. I think I'm kind of looking at it through my own lens, that I'm quite risk averse, and I'm really interested to hear from people that have made that jump. And to learn about their mindset and how they have identified the risk and mitigated it, and that's all part of what goes on in the Platinum network. I mean, let's just kind of wind this up now. If all three of you, if you could have a think about this one, if there's somebody watching this that has single occupancy buy-to-let, or is maybe starting out and wants to jump straight into HMOs, what would be kind of your number one tip for them in order to be a successful HMO landlord? Do you want to go first, Mike?
You're right in terms of it's a mentality thing, actually, Vanessa. So people who look to join Platinum, for example, I've spoken to loads over the years who take the plunge. But I do know that the moment of decision is a huge decision for people, partly because they're joining a franchise, and there's clearly some funds to invest in joining a franchise. But actually, the decision to actually go into this market is actually a big decision as well. For the reasons Emma's talked about, you do need to have knowledge or be able to stand on the shoulders of giants, people around you who have knowledge. Otherwise, you'll make too many mistakes because there's too many things that can trip you up. So you've got to have a method of minimizing risk, actually. And that's what, that's what Platinum offered me. So that's why I joined. It was my strategy of minimizing risk. I think I'm risk averse as well, but I had to make sure I ticked all the boxes to make sure that I wasn't exposing myself to risk that I didn't know anything about. So I think that's I'd probably say you need to have that support network in place, whatever that looks like. I mean, for me, it was Platinum, but it's something similar. It's got to be, top of the list for me, I think.
Excellent. How about you, Ben?
I agree with Mike. I think it's about knowledge. It's about having the support. I'm very risk averse. I don't like taking risks. I don't like spending money either. I break into a sweat when I do the weekly shop. So anything to do with property it's always concerning. The thing I would add though is that if you have a single AST buy-to-let, when was the last time you went to that property? Is it weeks, months, or years? If it's managed by someone, it can be a long time. And you will remember that property from the day you saw it. Can guarantee it won't look like that today. One of the nice things with HMOs is that we're going into them all the time, because part of the management of them is you need to go in the property. So we're looking at it, looking where we can improve the property and protecting our asset, really. And that's something that I wasn't really aware of until I got involved with the HMOs. It's very much hands-on, and I love being involved in property. But one of the problems, if you're having someone else manage it, you're not really involved in property. You're at arm's length. So I think it's a fantastic business if you've got the knowledge and you really want to get involved. But as Emma alluded to, I am very risk averse. So getting the knowledge is absolutely key to making the right decisions, and then having the ongoing support. If the worst happens and something out of your control goes wrong, you need to know who to turn to and quickly to get the resolution right. But the tenants respond really positive to having a professional landlord and being looked after, because they know that the properties are functioning as they should be. And they tend to look after the properties much better, I think, than if they were of a lower standard. So having the quality there is really important.
So one example, Vanessa, that brings it to life, I guess, is that you don't buy that many properties unless you're buying hundreds as a landlord, but we're not in that sort of scale. So we've bought 9 properties in the last 8.5 years. But actually, we've never bought one of those properties, just myself and my wife, on our own. We've always had another franchise partner take a look at it with us. And that's what I mean by making sure you minimise risk, because if we made a mistake with 1 or 2 of those 9, that would have a huge impact on our business. Can't afford to make those mistakes. So we protect ourselves by making sure we have that level of support. And it's a really good example of how you just tap into the resource around you and take away some of the risk that you could incur.
No, that's really interesting, Mike. And I think what I'm taking away from this is something that you alluded to earlier, and that was a property investor mindset. I think single occupancy buy-to-let is kind of the landlord mindset. You're not particularly hands-on. You probably have fully managed service, or you might be self-managing. But then I think being an HMO landlord, it's moving perhaps much more into the property investor mindset. Would you agree with that, Emma?
Yeah, actually, my top tip was to treat your HMO investment journey as a business. I think this is one of my gripes with the industry, actually, is that there's, I think the PRS has changed significantly over the last sort of couple of decades. And we've seen a much sort of more complicated blend of investors, property owners, landlords, tenants, housemates, all of that. But when you've got a portfolio of HMOs, I wouldn't really, in my mind, sort of associate that as sort of a sideline thing that you do as sort of a bit of a pension provision, which I think the sort of the standard buy-to-let investment strategy was or used to be. This is a business that certainly our partners are active in managing their business, whether they're sort of hands-on, doing the quarterly checks and things like that Ben obviously loves so much, which is great, but they're absolutely like planning and strategizing around how to invest and get the most out of that business. So yeah, I definitely would encourage anybody that's looking at getting into HMOs to really sort of embrace that mindset, as opposed to sort of thinking that you can kind of skim and do the HMOs sort of with a absolute minimal sort of investment from a time, knowledge, all sort of types of resource perspective.
Well, I think a good way to discover if HMOs are for you or not is to go along to a PPP discovery day, where people can meet the other partners, learn about the opportunity. And if it's not for you, that's good that you've realised it's not for you. But if it is for you, you've got a potential way to get in, mitigating your risk. And I think we can all agree that the risks are amplified post-COVID, post-Brexit. We've got, Russian-Ukraine war, we've got maybe a recession coming. So now is the time to be belts and braces, to have all the support, to have the knowledge, to have the education. Thank you all so much for joining me. I've taken away quite a few little golden nuggets from your combined HMO experience. One final word from each of you. Are you feeling confident about the future of HMOs? Are you going to keep
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't be more confident, actually.
Yeah, I think, as you said right at the beginning, Vanessa, there's a supply and demand dynamic in any marketplace, and this fills a gap, a fantastic opportunity, I think, young people to live in lovely houses with really nice, safe environment, fantastic landlords looking after them. It's a very different market for 20, 30 years ago, which was all about bedsits. This is a really high quality accommodation sort of a solution for young people. So I'm very confident in the model going forward. Absolutely.
And I share that. I think the model that we're running with our HMOs is really exciting. I think the market is there. That certainly the demand is there across the spectrum of tenants, really, and particularly over the next few years with uncertainty. We can look after our tenants and ensure that they benefit from having those lower costs and knowing that their bills are paid. That's very, very important. And it's property. And if you like houses or property in general, it's a really exciting business. And HMOs, I think, are probably the top of the agenda for people who really want to get involved in rentals and get involved with the property market. It's a great business. And I'm looking forward to the future. I think it'll be very exciting.
Well, I can sense your enthusiasm, all of you, really, really committed to it. And I think if you are committed to something 100%, you will find a way to make it work. So thank you all very much for joining me on this Zoom call. I feel that we could carry on talking for ages, but I'm mindful of the time. I would invite anybody who's watched this, who has taken something away from it, to comment below the video. If you've got any questions about HMOs, or anything that we've said in the video that you need clarification on, please do ask, and I'm sure the guys from PPP will be happy to come along and answer your inquiries. But for now, guys, thank you very much for being my guests on this deep dive onto HMOs. Very interesting and exciting times ahead, and I wish you all well with your HMO businesses.